Well, welcome back to another session of a 6th grade art class here, and we will be working today, as you can see, continuing on the automobile that we were drawing in the previous session using a grid system. So to quickly review, you're going to need to do this, if you haven't got this far, you'll need a piece of paper 10 by 16 inches, a couple of patterns if you can find them, or a compass if you know how to use such a thing. So this would be a compass right here for drawing circles, a pattern that's 4 inches in diameter across the middle, and another one that is 2.5 inches in diameter across the middle. Alright, and our piece of paper here that we're working on, or the picture we are drawing from, needs to be cut down or at least outlined at 8 inches wide by 5 inches tall. Each one of these squares is 1 inch. So if you were to do that, and on the JPEG it's already got lines drawn on it, so you would simply have to use a ruler and go around that and then carefully cut it out, or just be able to use your imagination. Alright, so having said all that, this is how far we got on our, I believe, our first day of drawing. So that's pretty good progress in one day, I must admit. So we're just going to keep on going on. It could take us a few days to draw it, and then it will take us several days to color it. So without any more distractions or disruptions or delays, let's get going on this. I'm going to be using this ruler quite frequently. It seems to be the one that shows up best on the video. It has the clearest numbers on it as well. And I will also be using a regular just drawing pencil with a cap eraser, but I would recommend that you all have a, on the sidelines here, have a chunk of a pink eraser. I also like to use a red pen periodically to outline around things that I may struggle with, so that I can get that hand memory, so that I can also then transfer that over to the piece of artwork. Alright, well, when we left off, it looks like we were somewhere about right in here. It looks in square C2 and C3 is where we were operating. And so we can probably just continue bringing these all together and working our way down from square E1 down to where, until we finally get the windshield and the top portion of the body of the car to come together. So I'm simply going to set this off to the side there so we can see at least the part we're trying to draw from. There we go. And I'm going to try to analyze what I'm seeing here. And I think I'll start up here in square E1 and work my way downward. What I'm noticing is that this windshield tilts just slightly. I'll even move it down here so we can compare them more accurately. This windshield tilts just slightly, and if I were to split this square and split this square, I'm going to bet that those tiny circles that are in the side of the windshield where it's actually hinged are pretty much right on that split line, and it sure looks like it. So if I go to square E2, which I'm going to do, and I'm going to carefully split that in half visually. You could measure it and use a ruler if you wanted to, but I believe it's accurate enough to just learn to estimate it. And I'm drawing this lightly because I want to be able to erase it later. But all it is helping me do is sight, S-I-G-H-T, sight in where I want my materials to go. So it looks to me also like this, the circle right here, which rests directly on that line, is about halfway. So if I put that little circle right there, about halfway, half of this distance from here to here. Alright, now above it is another small circle of about the same size. Now you could use a pattern if you wanted to, and some people do. Some people have found that, like, the little circles inside of their compasses, not their compasses, but inside of their rulers and stuff, are sometimes about the right size. In this case, I don't think so, but you can give it a try. Okay, so here we go. We've got our two little circles, one above the other. The one clearly rests on the grid line. So we can probably now use a ruler to try to draw to and through those lines. So it goes, let's see, about right here. It seems to hit this side of the hinge. I'm going to go ahead and just darken that a little bit. I will make those circles slightly larger later. It looks like we're going to go all the way down into square E3, so I'm going to just make my line go all the way down to square E3. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, probably drawing backhanded this time. Okay, so if I find the front of my windshield, which is drawn in there free-handed, see, then I can tilt this thing just slightly. That's pretty close right there. I think I should be satisfied with that. Now, when you're working backhanded like this, man, do you have to hold that ruler down, because all the work you've already done could be ruined very easily. Okay, we're just going to slide on down into square E3 there a little bit. So now we're going to compare what we've drawn. And it looks to me like my circles need to be just slightly larger. So I will not necessarily erase everything I've just done, just erase it enough so that I can make that circle just slightly larger. The same thing here, just slightly larger. There we go. Not bad at all, Brian. And I think it's probably a good idea just to continue that line anyway. It just makes logical sense to most people. So let's go back up here and touch this up a little bit. And I think we're on our way to having an actual windshield. So I'm going to bold these lines. And just going slow and steady is the operation here. That's how it all gets done. One square at a time, just like I said in the notes. So that seems to be pretty good. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of, I'm going to erase my split lines. And then, oh man, I'm trying to erase the whole picture now. Okay, here we go. And then of course dust it a little bit. So don't smear it all up. Seems to be a smudge right there needs to go. Seems to be a smudge right there needs to go. So keeping your work surface clean is a lot of the beauty of making your drawing. Alright, let's continue looking at this. Now, so our windshield is clearly come down into square E3 now, and we're in square E1, 2, and 3, so that looks pretty good. So I guess my question is, how far down does this line right here, this green stripe, how far down does it slope? Well, we can figure that out by using our red pen again. So I'm going to split it, and I'm going to split it again. And then by splitting it, it's showing me that it's about a little bit about just above the split line there. So let's go ahead and split square D3. And I have a tendency, and I've drawn this car many times, but I have a tendency to kind of flatten this out. When it really does, it pronouncedly slopes downhill. So I may have to correct something that I've already done earlier. Now, if I look at this, the top of the stripe maybe is not quite half of halfway. So if this is half of halfway, then not quite half of halfway. It's probably somewhere below that. So I'm going to give myself a little dot right there to kind of aim at, a registration dot. And then when it gets on the other side, see, it curves up. So I'm just going to curve it up like this with a dotted line. So I'm kind of getting in where I want it to go to begin with, and that is a good thing. So I'm going to dot until I finally get the line I desire. And in this case, it looks that's pretty good, so I'm going to just go ahead and bold it at this point. Okay, maybe erase any sort of weird markings out of it. Alright, now, that gives me something to aim at. See, this is actually quite a bit higher. I have it sloped in not really quite the right orientation here, so I'm just going to start right here and start aiming for the top of this, for that dot, my registration dot. And I may have to fight with my lines a little bit just to get them to look proper. Okay. So that means, see right here, I'm going to want to erase this portion out. Although the top portion doesn't look too bad. Maybe I can monkey and manipulate that a little bit. Yeah, that'll probably be okay. So it comes down, continues down. Now, see, I am getting some information here by looking at this. Because what I've discovered is that when I lay my ruler against the top portion of the door, that it's in fact a straight line from here all the way back to where square C and D come together. So that is, see, I did not notice that at first. So that sometimes you notice the truth about things after some investigation. You know, what you appears to be the right thing at first sometimes is easier than it may appear. Alright, let's go ahead and bold that line in. Alright, very nice. Looks almost like the picture we are drawing from. Now, we know that this bottom of the green stripe there just comes along and follows parallel, and we are going to hook it all together there anyway. So I'm going to just go back to my dotted line, and I'm going to try to keep it parallel as much as possible here. Which means I'm probably going to have to just fight with this little chunk there that I curved erroneously the other day in the previous session. So this is looking pretty good. And I mean, it really is drawing can be enjoyable while you are succeeding, but there's times when you may struggle that it kind of gives you fits. And so that's why it's good mental exercise. And it causes you to adjust to things and to change the way you believed about things when you first saw them. It makes you go back and analyze some things. Okay, now I think it's about time to erase our little mini splits there. And it looks to me like there's some progress being made here. Okay, let's dust this, and let's compare what we've got to each other. And I would have to say, it's pretty accurate. Okay, we're going to work on the continuing of the green stripe, and when we look at it carefully, we can see that in the upper left corner of square D3 is where it begins. So in square D3 it would probably be about right in here. So we're going to put a little registration dot right here, and that would be this spot right here on the drawing. Now, we notice that it's slightly bowed and it gets closer to the line, and it ends up somewhere down in D4. And people get this wrong all the time. So if I were going to plot a dot in D4, it'd be right there. D4. So I'm going to go down to square D4, and about an appropriate distance, I could measure it. Let's measure it and see what happens. I'm kind of curious. Okay. It says that it's 1/2 of a centimeter below the grid line. That means it would be 1 centimeter below the grid line over here. And so that would be about right in here. Okay. Okay. It's close to the line, closer to the line than this one is. So it'd be about right here. And that's the outside of that stripe. Now we know it's not angular, it is rounded on the ends, but we're just plotting it out right now so that we can get a good idea where it happens at. Now this line, or this stripe, goes slightly tilted downhill, and then it ends up just above what would be the halfway mark in this square, I'll bet. See, if that was about halfway, so it's maybe a little, about half of halfway. So it just barely gets over into here. Now we're talking about the outside of the stripe. So we're going to analyze it. We're going to put our dot right there, or where the outside of that stripe would be, and it would be in square, it looks like E4 at this time. So find E4, slightly downhill, just on the other side, about right here. It sure looks like it. Okay, and then at the end it will plug in, or it will connect up here to the windshield. So that'll give us something to work with for a minute. Okay, so this line here is slightly bowed, and we're going to draw the outside of the green stripe first, then we'll go back and we'll put the inside of the green stripe in. So the way I see it, if we were to just, I don't want to protect my drawing with my slip sheet, we're going to just dot along slightly curved, a slightly curved line, and in fact up here where these two meet, it's also slightly curved, so we could just go ahead and slightly curve it there. And then we're just going to, I'm dotting along in a sketching technique here until I can get just what I think is the right line. And it's slightly curved. My dots are slightly curved. I'm going to go ahead and bold them in. Okay. Now up here where these two meet, I have to do a bit of erasing. Alright, very good. A little dust to make sure it doesn't get all smeary. Now this also curves around this corner and it tilts downhill slightly towards our next registration dot. And this is to just simulate that the body of this car is curved slightly. Alright, so here we go. We're aiming for our registration dot with the dotted line technique. And the bottom of this door is almost straight, with curved corners. So we just keep dotting along. I just keep dotting along until I get the line that I like. It's easy to fix an erroneous dotted line. It is a pain in the neck to fix a heavily drawn continuous line that is wrong. Okay, that looks pretty good. So the dotted line technique continuing to work. So we're going to curve that corner over. I'm going to make sure that dot's removed so it doesn't look like a hard corner. So, and then we're just going to bold our lines where our dots have been that look appropriate. So here we are now to our corner. Alright, so that means we're probably going to have to work on this area up in here in order to make this look appropriate. So there's a few little details in here that only people who look at things carefully would probably notice. And that would be right here at the bottom of the windshield. There's a portion of it that's got two small bolts in it that attach to what appears to be like a triangle. And so we're going to find that. It's in square E2. It starts in square E2 and then it ends just below the line in square E3. So it looks to me like right here is where we're looking at, about right here. So we're going to draw that little curve in there that represents this portion, and it looks like it's even slightly wider than the windshield, so I'm going to bump that line out just a little bit so that I can do a little bit of custom erasing and make it look more like this. Alright, now I see exactly what they're trying to do here. Now this is just a tiny little horizontal line, it looks like, about right just below this grid line, and it's slightly tilted, it looks like to me. Now on our picture here it shows just two little dots. I think we can get away with two dots instead of having to draw a bolt. And so we're just going to go in. It looks like there's one above it and one directly on the grid line. So nice pronounced dot, and then right on the grid line another nicely pronounced dot. Okay, so we are simply reproducing what we see in this very small picture right here. And let's move on now. Now we have what appears to be kind of a right triangle. And I'm going to draw it in as a right triangle, and it kind of comes down just about like this. We know that the door will plug into it, or will attach to it, will touch it. So we're going to just bring it down a bit like this. This appears to swoop downward. It's kind of a right triangle with a curve in it right there. And then, strangely, this bottom piece curves downward too, so it kind of goes like this. Now these surfaces, all of them are roundy on the end. So we got to curve them, curve it again. Hold it up. Now the way I see it, there's a little square thing right here, so we're just going to put in an indication of that, because that's all it shows on the little picture. And then it looks like there's 2 bolts right here that hold it all on. So we'll put a circle and yet another circle right there. Now we've got something to work with. As you can see, this back bolt right here is where this line will end. So it looks like I've got this maybe bumped out just a little bit too far. And this is almost a straight line. So we're going to just aim right at that bolt. And we're going to do our dotted line thing, and it's going to go right at that bolt. It's on the left lower portion of the windshield. I'm going to go right at it, dotted line, dotted line. Alright, very good. Okay, and it is slightly tilted, as you can see. So I'm going to go back and bold my dotted line. Feel pretty good about it. Make sure that it's got a curved corner as it goes over into the next box. Alright, so we're doing pretty good here. If you're keeping up with this instruction and you're getting these kinds of results, that is fantastic. If you are struggling, then you should simply just pause the video until you catch up. And when I've drawn these cars numerous times, but I always find out something I did not know while I'm working on these cars. So it's always interesting. It's always an adventure. Okay, now we're simply just going to go along and put the inner portion of our stripe in. It's a lot like the letter P or the letter S or the letter W in our flag language. Alright, so we're going to start right here. And I'm going to just dot along. I want it to be an even stripe. I don't want it to be real skinny in some areas and real thick in other areas. So I'm just going to kind of dot along. Let's see. This is a little bit sharper corner, strangely, right there. So we'll just sharpen that corner a little bit, but not so much that it makes it look weird. And then this will, it just kind of hits that line almost perfectly. There's the micro smallest of spaces right in there. So if somebody's going to sweat that detail, then you better fix it. I'm going to let it go in this case because this is about 99.9% correct. So once I get my dots, and they look like they're about an even amount of space from the other portions. Let's see, this is a pretty sharp turn right there too, so we'll leave that like it is. Then I'll simply just go around just like we've been doing everything else. So what we're doing is we're simply analyzing things. It's really a lot like a very complicated graph, or I guess if it was math class, it would be a graph, I suppose. Okay, so let's go back and connect our lines and bold them. And same thing on the bottom of the door, and we're starting to get somewhere with our drawing. It's very accurately starting to resemble the reference drawing. Okay, so I think it's looking pretty good myself. Sometimes these drawings come out a lot better than other times, and I've drawn them many times myself, and I will attest to the fact that each time I get a slightly different result. But I gotta say, this time, since I'm making videos, I think I'm really more concerned about the accuracy of the results, and so now here I am making a much more accurate drawing, it appears. Okay, that's fantastic work. Now we're just going to continue on here. Let's start with the bottom of the car. I think if we get this put in here, it's going to give us a greater sense of how this really looks. So we're going to go down now to square C, 1, 2, 3, and 4. C4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And down here, we can see that the bottom of the car curves through here, okay? So it starts right here, and it disappears behind the big tire, and it re-emerges down here. And it makes it just barely below what appears to be halfway of this square. So if this is halfway of the square, it seems to me that the bottom of the car is a little more than halfway. So I'm going to put a dot, a registration dot, about right here, I think. And that'll give me something to aim at. Now, if you're super uptight about this, here's what we could do. We could measure from this grid line down to where we know the bottom of the bottom of the body of the car is at, and then we'll multiply that times 2. Now it says to me that that's about 1.5 centimeters. That means it would be 3 centimeters down this square, and if that's the case, just slightly higher. Wait a minute, maybe if I'm accurate, I was off by a fraction of a centimeter. So I do need to raise that just a hair. Make sure I'm in the right place now. There we go, measurement. And who would have thought this stuff works? So let's move the ruler off to the side, make our registration dot the exact number down here, which was 3 centimeters it looks like. And then where this comes out from behind the tire, we're just going to kind of visually estimate where this line would have gone through here if we were following it, and it would be somewhere about right here. And then we're just going to curve a line until it hits our registration dot that we made. So I'm going to dot along, dot along. So, see, measurement really does work a lot, and after you get really good at this particular type of drawing, you can estimate things extremely accurately. So, I was estimating myself, and I was only a fraction of a centimeter off from the actual correct answer. And sometimes, you know, you may have to make adjustments just for the beauty of the drawing. You know, the math will say one thing, but you know, you're still got to be responsible for trying to make it a thing of beauty. So if you've had bad measurements at some point in time somewhere else in the drawing and you attempt to apply measurements, it won't necessarily always work out for you. So see, it seems to me like the bottom of this door right here is awfully close to the bottom of this car. If I were to measure that, I would be able to get a decent, it looks like it's about, well, 1.5 centimeters. That would be 3 centimeters. Well, shut my mouth. It's right there on 3 centimeters. So I guess I'll have to live with the actual math. Okay. Now, so where this touches right here on this line, where C4 and D4 meet, that would be right here. This is really just tilted downhill, and it disappears behind the front tire. So we can use a ruler for this. And we're going to place it right here on the bottom of our car, and we can clearly see that here's the grid line right here, see, and this is the bottom of the car, and there's a mess of lines in there. It's difficult to see, but if you follow the bottom of the car here, you'll see it right there. And that would be, it looks to me like it's about, let's do a measurement here. I'm going to put a red dot there on the bottom of that car. That's not red, that's blue. Okay, let's try this again. Red dot right there on the bottom of that. Let's measure it from the grid line. There's the grid line. I'm going to follow the grid line over. I'm going to go up. It says it is 1/2 of a centimeter, meaning it will be 1 centimeter up from the bottom, from that grid line right there. So, if that's true, I'm going to put a dot right here. 1 centimeter up. And the square, G4. It's like battleship. Alright, now let's hook it all together. Take your ruler, put it on the bottom of the curved line representing the bottom of the car over here. Make sure it touches your dot, and then we're going to hold it down firmly. I'm going to cover up the dot just a bit, and then we're going to strike a mark, and it will go all the way behind the front tire in this case, and it should be pretty bold. I'm going to bold it up. I kind of missed my dot. I'm going to live with it, but I kind of missed it. Okay, that's pretty good. Alright, so that's where we're at right now. See, we've done the bottom of the car here, and it ends right there behind that tire. So that, so far, so good. Now, we're going to move on. If we get through the top of the car in this one session, that will be a huge, huge achievement for one session. So I think what we need to think about now is something like a detail. Well, let's get the outline of the car worked on here. So we've got where this little curved line is right here, and then we've got a flat spot, and then we've got a curve down again. So in my opinion, that little curve down seems to touch the back of the tire clearly in square G3. So here's G3. So when I look at this part right here, I'm going to go to G3, and it comes out the back of the tire about right here, and it kind of curves upwards like something like this. Now I'm going to draw that line, but I'm going to do a measurement also where that curve ends and the flat line begins. So I'm going to try to find out what is that measurement. It says it's it's about 3/4 of a centimeter. So if it's 3/4 of a centimeter, that means it would be 1.5 centimeters over here. And I've got that in about the right spot. That's 1.5 centimeters. So I'm quite impressed with myself. So all right. So that's good. We're going to go back and bold that. And it might not quite, it might actually come up a little bit steeper. It might be over here somewhere. So I like to be accurate in these things. So that means I'm going to have to dive it down with a little bit more aggressive curve. And I think that actually does look more actually like the picture here. Okay, now we're going to look over here. And right here there's another curve, and this curve comes down into square E3. And that's in front of the windshield. Isn't that funny how this goes up and touches on this part right here? So I'm going to try to duplicate that curve, and it swoops down pretty dramatically. Something like this. Okay, let's see what we got. It swoops down kind of like this. It never gets below this part. So, okay. I think that's going to work. Now I could apply a measurement if I wanted to know for sure. I could measure from here to here, and then I could do some multiplication by 2. Now, what we've got here is something we can now use our ruler to hook together, let's hope. So if we tilt it like that, that looks a little bit dramatically tilted when I reference this. So that makes me think I need to probably bring this down just a little bit farther. Okay, erase this portion off. Now try it again. That's looking a little bit better, but it also makes me think that this is a little bit skinny up there, so I'm going to raise that up even a little bit more, maybe. Alright, now let's compare them again. Now I'm starting to really, this is starting to look a little bit more acceptable to me right here. I'm going to bow that line up here a little bit more. Raise it up just a little bit more. Okay, and now I'm thinking, if I were to dot this line, I'm aiming at the upper one, so I'm going to get rid of this one now. Series of corrections. And okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I think I can go ahead and just bold that line with a ruler, and then I'll go back and touch it up a bit. Okay, gotta say. Now I'm going to just smooth that out, because sometimes these ruler lines, you know, they look a little very out of place, very mechanical when it's supposed to be a drawing performed by the human hand, you know, and so you can soften those lines just by going over them a bit and then connecting them together so it looks like they were always meant to be that way. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. When I compare these two pictures together, I'm getting a pretty good sense that they're very much the same. And I hope you're getting that same sense as well. I guess if I had any problem with it right now, it would be that I think my tire is in slightly the wrong place there, and this looks a little awkward, so I may have to kind of manipulate that a bit more in order to make myself feel better about it there. Smooth it a bit so it's not quite so angular the way it comes up into the picture. That looks a little bit more visually attractive. Okay, that deserves a bit of a dusting. And we'll look at it and try to figure out where we go next with this. So, I guess if I had to go anywhere, the next place I would probably start working would probably be on this steering wheel that we can see right in here. Now this particular steering wheel has a kind of a three-dimensional appearance to it the way it's drawn, but typically we don't draw it so that you can see the bottom portion of the steering wheel. We just draw it so that we may be looking at it in a profile. For instance, a profile means we're looking at it straight sideways. Just like we are looking at this car straight sideways, and so we are looking at it in a profile. Okay, so that bell indicates that we're out of time today, and so we will pick up in the next session with our steering wheel, and then we will also move on from there to do these sway bars, which are these mechanical pieces on the bottom, some of the lines inside of the car, such as where the hood goes and the latches, and then the rims as well. And if there is time in the next session, we will begin our decorations with flames and smoke and hood scoops and such on our automobiles, numbers and stripes. And that will be pretty much the part of the drawing, and then we will begin to set it up for coloring, and that will take several days to get that part done. So this was a good session. A lot of production was made. I will see you next session. Thank you.